Intel's AI strategy is facing a setback while rival AMD is demonstrating how its investments in AI is putting it on a new growth trajectory. Welcome to In Depth, everyone. I'm Gina Narcissi, and today I'm talking to senior editor Dylan Martin. He's been in the weeds covering this stuff, both of these companies. Dylan, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
You know, you wrote about Intel seeing a big executive departure earlier this week. Who was it, and why was it such a big deal that he's leaving?
Yeah. And so, we said this is Intel facing a setback in its AI strategy because it was Sachin Katti, who was the chief technology and AI officer for Intel. And as part of that role, he was in charge of Intel's AI strategy and product roadmap. And this was a role that he was given just back in April. So it was like roughly 6 months that he had been in this role. He had been given it by the new CEO, Lip Bhutan. And then on Monday, he posted on X that he is leaving for a job at OpenAI. He's going to be building out compute infrastructure for OpenAI's artificial general intelligence, also known as AGI. So it was definitely a surprise. I mean, obviously we don't know what happened internally, if there was any kind of disagreements, but usually if you have someone named as a leader 6 months ago, you expect them to be staying around longer than that.
How is Intel responding?
Yeah, so I think what was interesting and perhaps surprising is that when we reached out to Intel for comment, Intel told us that Intel CEO, Lip Bhutan, is taking over leadership responsibilities for what are called the AI group and the advanced technologies group. And those are the groups that Sachin Katti led, and now the CEO is taking direct responsibility for those. So that's quite unusual, but Lip Bhutan has been doing a lot of restructuring over the last several months to create what he calls a flatter organization, basically fewer management layers. And basically he wants to kind of like really be involved with Intel's most important priorities, and AI is one of them. So normally you would expect someone else to take the job if the leader of the AI efforts is leaving, but it seems like it's just so important that Lip-Bu wants to be directly involved. And it's quite a statement in making that move.
Absolutely. When the CEO is taking ownership of a specific, business unit, that is, I think, a big sign, a big signal to how important that is to that company. You also wrote about another big chip development from an Intel rival this week. Can you talk about what AMD said at its financial analyst day that you covered?
Yeah. And so, as I have written about quite a lot, AMD has definitely been pretty far ahead of Intel in terms of mounting an effective challenge against NVIDIA in the AI infrastructure market with its Instinct GPUs. And then, so on Tuesday, AMD had its financial analyst day. The idea is that AMD is giving investors some greater details on what it thinks its business will look like in the next 3 to 5 years. And, no surprise, much of AMD's future business is going to be based on growth in AI. And a lot of this is expected to come from AMD's data center AI efforts. This is the same area where, Intel had its leader leave on Monday. So, it's very important because there's a lot of growth and a lot of profit that can be made in that area. And so AMD had this presentation, and then they basically were like, over the last 5 or so years, we've invested like $100 billion into the company. $40 billion was for organic investments in things like R&D, but then AMD spent $60 billion on acquisitions over the past 5 or so years. And what they are showing is that they are expecting their annual revenue to grow by roughly 35% every year for the next 3 to 5 years. And that is quite a change from what has historically been 21% annual growth rate for its revenue. So they're leaping ahead by 14% or so in annual growth because of all these investments they made in, a lot of things related to AI, but, speeding up the cadence of their GPU roadmap. So they're releasing a new data center GPU every year. They acquired a company called ZT Systems so that they can build rack scale platforms similar to what NVIDIA is doing. And so, yeah, it was just, it was definitely a big show of strength for AMD. AMD CEO did say that she has clear expectations of AMD reaching double-digit share growth against NVIDIA. NVIDIA obviously dominating the AI infrastructure market, and so it was quite a statement. Obviously NVIDIA is so much further ahead, but AMD is definitely shaping up or showing that it can be potentially a really good competitor in this space. Intel, we're still waiting to see if that will happen or not.
Absolutely. And with these investments these companies are making in I think it'll be really interesting to see how these, growth numbers play out, of course, over, into 2026 as well. And we know you're always covering, these big companies here like Intel, like AMD, like NVIDIA. So thank you so much for joining me today and chatting with me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.